Hello and welcome to part 3 in my series of videos I'm putting out this week, where I break down all the fights taking place this weekend at UFC London from a betting perspective. Now, I've already covered 6 fights on this card, including the main event between Darren Till and Jorge Masvidal. You can check out the breakdowns for those fights in part 1 and 2 of this video. I'll link to both those videos in the description below. And in this video, part 3, I'll be breaking down another 4 fights from a betting perspective. Now, this is a massive card. I'm going to be sharing loads of useful information with you in today's video, and I'll be covering the final 3 fights in tomorrow's video, in tomorrow's live stream video, if this video gets 50 likes. So it is already scheduled in for tomorrow, guys, at 2 p.m. British time. You can set a reminder, you can check whatever time that is for you in your country, and 2 p.m. UK time is roughly around 2 hours before the first fight starts on the early prelims. So if you want to see me break down the final 3 fights on this card, as well as answer all your questions about the fights taking place this weekend, I'll be going through the live chat and answering every single one of your questions. And if you also want to see me hunt for a decent value prop bet for every single fight on tomorrow's card, then hit a thumbs up on this video, and like I say, if this video gets 50 likes, I will do that. And if you don't know what a prop bet is, prop bets are basically these types of bets, highly specific bets. For example, you could bet on Darren Till to win in round 1. That would be considered a prop bet. So if you want that live stream, if you want me to do, put out all that content, cover the remaining 3 fights, answer your questions, and hunt for prop bets, please hit the thumbs up button below. And if this video gets 50 likes, I'll do that live stream tomorrow. But let's now get right into this video, because I've got tons of stuff to talk to you about and tons of stuff to show you in this video. This is going to be a big one. So the first fight that I want to jump into today is the first ever all Welsh fight in the UFC, which is cool because I'm a Welshman. I live in the suburbs on the outskirts of Cardiff, so this is a big deal for me. Jack Marshman probably lives and trains around about 20 minutes from where I live, so it's really cool to see him in there this weekend against another Welshman, John Phillips, who goes by the name of the White Mike Tyson, which tells you everything you need to know about his fighting style. But obviously, straight off the bat, before we have to go into talking about how both these guys match up, we do have to mention the fact that Jack Marshman has missed weight for this fight by 2 pounds. He weighed in at 188 pounds instead of the middleweight limit of 186 pounds, and this isn't the first time that this has happened before. If we take a look at Marshman's history, we can see that when he was scheduled to fight Brad Scott, which was back in when would it have been? It would have been in March 2018, so around about a year ago now. We can see here that Marshman was basically pulled from the fight against Brad Scott last year because of concerns over his weight cut. However, it is worth noting that this fight is at 185 pounds middleweight against John Phillips, and Marshman was trying to get down to welterweight at 170 pounds for the fight against Brad Scott. So not Marshman's first run-in with some weight cutting issues, but also it was in a different weight class, so can't be too harsh on him. And also, one thing I will say is that Marshman didn't really look that bad when he was weighing in. He looked pretty healthy, didn't really look that dehydrated, didn't look like he had a particularly tough cut. He just missed the middleweight limit by 2 pounds. And of course, Darren Till posted this on his Twitter and Instagram earlier on the day. I'll read it out for you. Darren Till said, "Well done to every fighter making weight apart from Jack Marshman. I'm going to tell you something that he told me while we were sat in the sauna, and it really hit me full on." Darren Till goes on to say, "Jack says to me, this is the hardest part, eh? And I replied, yeah, but glad I only have a pound to go. How much do you have to go?" And he told Darren that he still had 5 pounds to cut when Till only had a pound to cut. And then Darren goes on to say, "I could see him with all the layers and clothes on, doing his utmost to make weight, sweating his bollocks off. And I've been there in the past. I know what it feels like. I know what he was going through." Then he says to me, "Yeah, man, it's getting hard for me because I'm still trying to fight, but I'm also in the army. So it's getting really difficult to juggle the two." As soon as he said that to me, I respected him so much and thought, hang on, he shouldn't be having to make a living. Hang on, he should be making a living from fighting. He shouldn't have to also hold down a job in the army. And then Till just goes on to say that, you know, finally, when you're in the UFC, life should get easier, but it's clearly not, because Marshman still having to work a job in the army. Sometimes, sadly, this is not the case, and sometimes it makes me think we deserve as much money as the boxers and football players. This is not a game, this is a dog-eat-dog world, and we all have to have a strong mind in this game. Just something to think about. If anyone was going to give Jack some shit for not making weight, you've got my respect, sir. So that was a really cool thing for Darren Till to post there. Obviously, Marshman, it can't be easy being a professional fighter and also trying to hold down a job. But with him missing weight, even though missing weight might not be that big of a red flag because Marshman looked okay, you know, obviously having to work a full-time job and trying to be a pro MMA fighter, it's a big red flag going into this fight. But before I talk about how both these guys match up, obviously I will give my thoughts on how both these guys match up. But to be honest with you, Jack Marshman at the media day this week actually broke this fight down better than I think anyone could. Marshman basically nails how I feel about this fight and how, you know, I guess anyone would feel about this fight if they'd done their homework on it. So I'm just going to hit mute on the mic and I'm going to play this video to you because I can't say it any better than Jack, to be honest with you. This is exactly how I see this fight as well.
I was about to say, is this the perfect style matchup for you? A guy who he really doesn't have any interest whatsoever in going to the ground. He just wants to stand and throw leather at you, and that's kind of your style as well. So I mean, is this the ideal matchup for you?
I got a good level of jiu-jitsu. I got my wrestling's decent. It's like John's got one way he can beat me, and we all know what that is. And I've got a fucking closet full of ways I can beat him, and that's the difference in the fight. You know, if I want to take him down, if I grind him out for 3 rounds, you know, I'm not a guy that's into a boring fight. So if I do take him down, I'll be looking to hurt him on the ground, and if I keep it standing, I'll be looking to outbox him and beat. You know what I mean? I've got a lot of ways I can win, whereas I feel like he's got one way he can win. You know, and that's just throwing haymakers from the hip like he does. You know, which, you know, it's obviously worked for him because he's got 21 knockouts on his record, but I'm confident. I'm a savvy enough boxer to avoid his big shots, and I think I got good enough wrestling to take him down. I got good enough grappling to sub him. I'm massively confident going into the fight. This is, you know, from seeing your fights in the past, all the way from Bama all the way up, you do seem to have this habit of getting involved in these incredible tear-ups. You always end up backstage, you're bloodied up, bruised up. Is it? It's like I can win a fight, and one of my favourite ones, I remember I knocked a guy out in my early pro career. Like, I knocked a guy out in 30 seconds, got back, I was buzzing, and then I had a big split on my hair. I was like, I didn't even think I got hit. It was like 30 seconds the fight was. It's like I seemed to cut and bleed, and yeah, but the fans seemed to like it. So. Is this one of those where, as you say, it would be very easy to just be drawn into a stand-up, tear-up fight? Is this a fight where yourself and your coaches are more focused on maybe being a little bit more pragmatic, a bit more smart, mixing things up more than maybe you have in previous fights? I just got to fight how I fight in the gym, and that's purely like that's as far as I go. Like how I fight in the gym, I don't get hit with silly shots. I don't just get into a war for the sake of getting caught with one. I'm a much better boxer than that, so I don't need to be in a war. I can outbox people. I can outbox them. I can out-wrestle them. I can out-grapple them. So it's like you said, it's just been a bit more. You know, just because he catches you with one shot doesn't mean you got to stand there and throw haymakers. That doesn't mean I got to take him down. Because I can do it on my feet and not get into a wall. Just box clever, you know. And is the only slight disappointment going into this one that it's not happening in Wales? Yeah, well, I said that if
So that is pretty much exactly how I feel about this fight, guys. Couldn't have put it any better than Marshman. Both these guys, just check it's not muted. Yeah, both these guys do have a very similar style of fighting. They're both primarily boxers. You'll very rarely see them throw kicks or elbows or anything like that. Both guys have got really bad takedown defense and a low-level ground game. But there's absolutely no doubt that Marshman's better everywhere. He's faster. He's more technical. His boxing's his overall technique's just way better. And even though both guys are very low level on the ground and they've both got bad wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there's no doubt that Marshman is better everywhere. So what Marshman is saying there, I completely agree with him. There is literally only one way that Phillips can win this fight, and it's with a puncher's chance. It's with landing that knockout blow. And Marshman does have the skills to beat him everywhere. It's really nice to see Marshman, you know, talking about fighting smart here, because let's face it, if we look at his record, He's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. His only win is against a guy that's no longer in the UFC. You know, he won his UFC against Magnus Satan-Black, but he was getting destroyed in this fight. So he really needs a win here if he wants to stay in the UFC. So it is nice to see him talking about potentially taking, you know, Phillips down and grinding him out, and not talking about wanting to get into one of these crazy slugfests that Phillips has a crazy habit of dragging people into. Because Phillips, like I say, does go by the name of the White Mike Tyson. He does have an amazing chin. He hits very hard, but at the same time, he's very one-dimensional. And I want to show you this fight against Charlie Ward, Conor McGregor's mate, which basically completely sums up John Phillips. You know, this fight is over and done within 2 rounds, but within those 2 rounds, you see absolutely everything about John Phillips. This footage perfectly encapsulates what he brings to the table. As you can see here, only a few seconds into the fight, he comes out headhunting, winging bombs, looking for the early knockout. But one thing you'll also notice about John Phillips is that I'll just say it there while I continue talking about his striking. But there you can see Phillips' takedown defense, absolutely terrible. You know, Charlie Ward is an Irish boxer, not really known for his takedowns, grappling and ground game. And there he easily puts Phillips on his back. And Phillips has gone absolutely nothing on the ground. But early on, you've seen, this is only 15 seconds into the fight. But John Phillips' style of striking, and if you go back and watch his last fight in the UFC against Kevin Holland, you'll see that he just basically wings left and right hooks. Now, if he lands with a lot of power and he hits extremely hard. But those winging shots shouldn't cause a good technical boxer like Marshman too many problems, as long as they don't get sucked into a reckless exchange. Now, Marshman in the past has been known to brawl, but if he does what he says in that interview where he says that, you know, if I eat a big shot, I don't have to get sucked into a crazy exchange. It's my choice. I could choose to fight smart. If he actually sticks to that, it should be a relatively easy fight for Marshman, because Marshman does have an amazing chin. It's unlikely that Phillips catches him with a big bomb that just puts him out with 1 shot. You know, we saw Marshman exchange shots and go deep into the 2nd round against Thiago Santos, and we all know, you know, how dangerous Thiago Santos is. Marshman actually dropped Santos in the 1st round of that fight. Marshman's a very, very dangerous boxer. And there, just want to go back a few seconds, we can see as Phillips works his way back to his feet against Charlie Ward, again Phillips' poor takedown defense on show. Ward easily takes him down, and Ward controlling Phillips from top position. You can see Phillips absolutely no ground game. Even a low level guy like Charlie Ward is able to mount Phillips just because how bad Phillips is on the ground. So even though Marshman, not known for his grappling, he does train at, you know, at Jack Shaw's gym with, you know, a lot of talented grapplers. You would have to give Marshman the advantage when it comes to grappling in this fight, and it'll be very interesting if Marshman does what he alluded to in that interview and he comes out and looks to take Phillips down and grind him out, because it could potentially be an easy night's work for him. And then if we carry on, just skipping through this video, they're back up now with 2 minutes left to go in the round, and again you'll just see Phillips' style, just wild, just wing shots. He doesn't set anything up. He doesn't look to outbox you. Every single punch he throws is looking to take your head off. He's looking for the KO with every single shot. But again, his takedown defense lets him down. Absolutely shocking takedown defense. So we will skip through to the end of this round now. You can just see late on Phillips starts to get aggressive. Hurts Ward towards the end of this round. You know, knocks him down. And then that is the end of the round. But what I want to show you after this is, if we skip ahead a bit further on into the fight, again you'll see at the beginning, this is the beginning of the 2nd round, Phillips comes out a bit slower, but again he's winging those big hooks, you know, headhunting, looking to take Charlie Ward's head off. And this is his style, this is how he strikes in every fight. But again, look, at this point, you know, Charlie Ward doesn't really have that much energy to complete a takedown, but he's shot in so deep on Phillips. He's really deep in on this double leg. He's deep in on Phillips' hips. And Phillips has done the hard work here. He stuffed the initial shot. All he has to do here is clear his legs. But look at how square John Phillips is standing here, and that enables Charlie Ward just to drive through on the final takedown and get it easily. But then they spend a couple more minutes on the ground, and then this is finally what I want to show you here, when the referee stands them back up. This is what John Phillips is so good at doing. Phillips is, for whatever reason, great at sucking people into reckless exchanges, because that's where he thrives. Phillips has got an amazing chin, he trusts in his chin, and he wants to bait people into getting into a firefight with him, because he trusts his chin. He knows that's his best chance of winning. If he can bait them into a firefight, he's willing to bet on his chin and bet that he can get the kill shot and the knockout. And you'll see that here. He's almost like the Welsh Diaz. Watch. He's now got comfortable in there, starting to find his range, and you'll see him start to talk to Charlie Ward. You'll start to see him frustrate Charlie Ward. Here, in a few moments, they're practically having a conversation in there. As they're exchanging shots, you know, Charlie Ward landed a nice left hook there. Phillips talking to him about it. They're just having a conversation here. And you know, the whole reason why Phillips is doing that, he's baiting Charlie Ward into a crazy exchange. He's inviting Charlie Ward to hit him and just slipping his punches. Like he does it again here, and then he just starts letting his hands go, and you can see the writing is on the wall. And eventually, it doesn't take long before John Phillips lands the kill shot and gets the knockout punch. But you can see it there. You know, if we just rewind to this point and watch this segment again, you know, now that Phillips is comfortable in there, he just wants to make Charlie Ward miss and frustrate him and get him to exchange. Eats a big left hand there. You can see John Phillips' chin on display. Phillips' chin never in question. Very durable, very tough. The left hand lands there. But from then, he starts calling Charlie Ward on, starts talking to him, and they're having a conversation. And that is exactly what John Phillips wants. He wants people to stand in front of him. He wants them to exchange with him. And if Jack Marshman can avoid doing that, if Jack Marshman can avoid getting sucked into those crazy exchanges, he stands a great chance of winning this fight. So, if we have a look at this matchup right now from a betting perspective, due to Jack Marshman missing weight today, his odds have improved quite a bit in the last 24 hours or 48 hours. As we could see, he was around a 1.53 favourite at the beginning of this week, and his odds have improved now up to around 1.71 on some betting websites, including Pinnacle, which is one of the best betting websites to use. So if we pop those odds into the implied probability calculator, 1.71 gives him an implied probability of 58%, and for the American people watching this video, that is odds of around minus 141. That's minus 141. So with Marshman having an advantage everywhere, with Marshman, you know, clearly talking a good game in fight week about alluding to the fact that he may expose John Phillips' bad takedown defense and look to grind him out, there's a lot I am liking about Marshman here. Now, with him having to work a full-time job and also be a pro MMA fighter, that is a red flag. But Marshman has been in the army throughout his entire MMA career. You know, back when he was competing in BAMMA and Cage Warriors, this is something that Marshman's always done. It's not like Marshman's only just started to work a full-time job on top of being a pro MMA fighter. So realistically, we should see the same kind of Marshman we've always seen. And if that's the case, I do give him a really good chance of beating John Phillips, you know, based on Phillips' style, based on the stuff Marshman's saying, based on the fact that he is just better everywhere. He's a more technical boxer. He's faster. Now, you've just seen John Phillips has got significant deficiencies. So if we pop his odds around about 2.30 at the moment into the implied probability calculator, and odds of 2.30 for our American listeners is plus 130, we can see that the implied probability on John Phillips is 43%. So given his deficiencies, given that Marshman's a more technical boxer, given the fact that, you know, Phillips really has no takedown defense or ground game, there is absolutely no way that I would bet on John Phillips in this fight. But at 1.71 minus 141, Marshman is interesting to me. The problem with the odds on this fight is that betting is a zero-sum game, okay? When you lose a bet, this is not like when you buy shares in Tesla or you buy Bitcoin, or, you know, you can cash out along the way. Obviously, if you lose a bet, you lose everything. So when I place bets, I like to get my money into really strong situations. Now, I absolutely think Marshman should win this fight, but the odds of 1.71 carry an implied probability of 60%, which I don't love, because even though I favour him slightly more than 60%, It's not that much more than 60%. I don't give him too much more than a 60% chance of winning this fight. You know, around about maybe a 65% chance. 70% is a bit of a stretch given the fact that Phillips does have a good chin, does hit hard, and Marshman does have a tendency to get sucked into these crazy wars. But this is a bet that over the next 24 hours I will be considering. You know, Marshman's odds have improved a lot. And if they continue to improve, you know, if we were to see Marshman's odds improve up to 1.74, which would be minus 135, or even up to, you know, minus 178, which would be minus 128, then he would start to become a lot more attractive to me. If I could get a decent margin on him, up to 60%. So if I could bet Marshman at odds which would give him an implied probability of around about 55%. You know, even if I've capped this fight wrong and Marshman only deserves to be a 60%, only deserves to have a 60% implied probability because, you know, he's suffered some problems in this training camp which led him to miss weight. You know, he's still better than John Phillips everywhere, and he's still talking a good game. So really, I guess what I'm trying to say to summarise is I cap Marshman somewhere between 60 and 65% chance of winning this fight. And I ideally like to get a 5 to 10% margin when I place bets, because like I say, this is a zero-sum game. When you lose everything. So the goal should be to always get your money into strong positions. You know, I made the example in yesterday's video in part 2, where I was talking about Nathaniel Wood and Dominic Reyes. Yes, I absolutely believe those guys will win their fights on Saturday, but at the same time, their odds are very steep. There's just not a lot of value there. Whereas if you look at a guy like Tim Means last week, even though he lost, when we bet him, his implied probability was 65%. And I personally gave him an 80+% chance of winning the fight because of how much better than Price he was everywhere, because of how amazing his chin had been up until this point in his career. Obviously he lost, but that is a perfect illustration of why you need to get a good price for your money in this game. Because with all of Means' advantages, he still managed to lose. You know, with all of Marshman's advantages here, with how aggressive Phillips is, he can definitely land a kill shot and knock him out. So I don't love the odds on Marshman at the moment, but I do think he's going to win. And I will be keeping a close eye on these odds over the next 24 hours to see if they improve. And I hope they improve. And if they get up to around 1.74, you know, anywhere really from 1.74 to 1.80, I would be interested in taking a shot on him. And odds of 1.74 is minus 135. Because if we're capping Marshman at somewhere between 60 to a 65% chance of winning, and his odds improve to 1.74, that would give him an implied probability of 57%, which means if we did cap him at midway between 60 and 65%, there we're getting our minimum 5% margin over the betting sites. So I know that was a bit long-winded, guys. I need to figure out how to get my points across and explain myself better. But I will get better, and yeah, I think Marshman could be a decent bet this weekend. Don't love him at the current odds, but I'm hoping that they will improve a little bit. So now we move on to the next fight, which is Joe Duffy against Mark Diakiese. And this is another fight in many ways where, even though they're completely different fighters, it's kind of a similar dynamic. Oh, it's not a similar dynamic, but it's kind of a similar situation where there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Joe Duffy is significantly better than Mark Diakiese everywhere from a technical point of view. You know, Duffy is a great boxer, excellent striking defense, great combos, brilliant hand speed, doesn't really telegraph anything. You know, he can throw up nasty head kicks without, you know, any tells at all. Very, very dangerous. I love watching Duffy fight. And Diakiese, with his taekwondo style, he's looking in excellent shape for this fight. He is explosive, he is dangerous, he does hit hard, but there's no doubt that he's second best to Duffy everywhere. You know, Duffy has just got better technique, he's better defensively, and he's significantly better on the ground. You know, he's got a black belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and we've seen in the past that Diakiese is quite low level on the ground, even though he has been making big improvements. But when we look at a fight like this, again, when we talk about, you know, Nathaniel Wood being, you know, better than Quinones almost everywhere, and Dominic Reyes being better than Ozdemir almost everywhere, there's no doubt that Duffy is better Denmark, Diakiese everywhere. But again, we've got to get a good deal to make money long term in this betting game. So if we look at Duffy at the moment, you can get him, you know, around about 1.56 on some sites, but the average at the moment is around about 1.53. So if we pop that into the odds calculator, that gives Duffy an implied probability of 65%. Now, with this fight, I do just have a few concerns over Duffy, aside from, you know, how these guys match up skill for skill. The first being that he hasn't fought in almost 18 months. He's been out for a long time. The last time we saw him was against James Vick, where he suffered that KO loss right at the death at the end of that second round. Then, since then, he suffered from a rib injury, which forced him to pull out of his fight against, I believe it was against Damir Ismagulov. Yeah, pulled out of his fight in December with a rib injury. And over the last 18 months, he's also been battling a shoulder injury. He said that his shoulder injury was a long-term injury, and now that it's fully healed up, it feels better than it's ever felt before. So it's possible we could see a new and improved version of Duffy, you know, on Saturday, and he could look great. It's also worth noting that Duffy is no longer training at TriStar for this fight either. So those are just some factors, you know, some macro factors to think about before we talk about how these guys match up skill for skill. Now, what I would say is that there's also some stuff going on with Diakiese outside the octagon. He has since left American Top Team because he said he wasn't getting enough one-to-one attention, and he's now training back with his old trainers in the north of England. Now, that's interesting because, in my opinion, even though Diakiese's coming into this fight on a 3-fight losing streak, you know, he has fought very tough guys. There's no shame in losing to the guys like Drakkar Klose, Daniel Hooker and Nasrat Haqparast. These guys are absolute beasts. And it's interesting how Diakiese's chosen to leave American Top Team, because in my opinion, American Top Team is the best MMA gym in the world. It's a great place for fighters to go and develop their skills. And when Diakiese first went out to train at ATT, I thought it was a great move. And to be honest with you, even though pretty much since the day he went to ATT, he's on a 3-fight losing streak, I still think that he's been making massive improvements from fight to fight. You know, if you go back and watch Diakiese's performance against Frankie Perez, a fight that he won, and then go and watch him against the likes of Daniel Hooker and Nasrat Haqparast, you'll see big technical improvements from Diakiese. There's no doubt about it. So it's a shame that he has left ATT because he was moving in the right direction. And it's also interesting me how he's going to look against Duffy, because he looked in incredible shape at the weigh-ins today, and he is a dangerous guy. There's no doubt that Diakiese hits extremely hard. What I would say about Diakiese is, you know, earlier on in his career, he suffered with bad pacing issues. He would come out the gate in round 1 extremely aggressively, looking to take his opponent's head off with explosive, you know, powerful shots. But he has paced himself way better in his last few fights, to the point where in his last 3 fights, particularly against Hooker and Haqparast, he actually has looked dangerous into that 3rd round. Now, Duffy's got a really good chin. He has got great striking defense, brilliant boxing. But one thing I would say about Duffy is that, are we seeing 2 fighters on opposite trajectories here? You know, is Duffy going to be dealing with any ring rest? And is Diakiese going to be continuing to make big improvements from fight to fight? And is he going to show up and give Duffy some problems here? So, where we talk about, you know, flash KOs, obviously a finish in this fight is less likely. You know, but they're in the lightweight division, the lighter weight classes. You tend to see you tend to see less finishes in the lighter weight classes. You know, here we can see Diakiese has almost gone the distance in 4 out of his last 5 fights. So not particularly dangerous, even though we've seen before he came into the UFC, had some very, very explosive finishes, very, very dangerous striker. But, you know, Duffy could be a fighter that I'd look at this weekend, guys, at these odds. You know, he's got an implied probability of 65%. He's so technical, and his advantages are so big on the ground and also standing up, that I think that Diakiese's only real chance of winning this fight is through a flash knockout. And if you look at Diakiese as well, like I say, this fight almost went the distance against Hooker. He went deep into the third round. He got submitted. But really, the only guys he's finished, you know, over the last 5 years have been low-level guys. You know, Kane Musa, Rick Servaja, Lucas Sajewski. I believe Sajewski took this fight on short notice, and Timu Pakalin. You know, with Duffy being so good defensively, so technical, I just think really Diakiese's got a puncher's chance in this. Only really can win this fight through flash KO, and while it can absolutely happen, as long as Duffy shows up and performs like he did, you know, in his last few fights against Vic and Madadi and Poirier. You remember he outstruck Dustin Poirier in this fight. Poirier had to take him down and grind him out to win. You know, as long as Duffy shows up looking just like he did over his last few fights, he should be good here. But obviously, the ring rest, the injuries are a little bit of a concern, but I do expect Duffy to get this done. So that might be a bet you want to take a look at as well. But Diakiese is dangerous. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So if we move on to the next fight, guys, we are going to be talking about Saparbek Safarov against Negumereanu. Now, I'm definitely butchering that name. There's no way I'm pronouncing that correctly. So I'm just going to call this guy Nick, if that's okay with him. Hope I don't offend him, but I think I'd offend him a lot more if I butchered his name. And people screw up how to pronounce my name all the time. So, yeah, I'll just call him Nick. So, this fight is a really tough one for me to cap, to be honest with you, because Nick's record, it's quite funny. I'm calling him Nick like he's a friend, like I know him. It sounds strange, but Nick's record is extremely padded. Extremely padded. If we take a look at it here, you know, his last win was against a guy with a 10-13 record. So that's 10 wins, 13 losses. Then he fought someone with 2 wins, 15 losses, 7 wins, 5 losses, 12 wins, 41 losses. You get the idea, guys. And when I watched these 4 fights, most of these fights, most of Nick's career fights are available to watch online. When I watched all his past fights, I mean, his opponents are just almost like they're trying to lose. Like they concede victory to him so easily that it's really difficult to gauge where he's at. Because most of the time, when you watch a fighter in their past fights outside the UFC, it really doesn't matter the level of opponent they're facing. You should still be able to gauge roughly what they bring to the table by the techniques that they display. So Mike Grundy is a really good example of that. You know, I covered that in part 1 of this series of videos. You can check it out, clicking the link in the description below. You can just tell from the way that Mike Grundy works, the way he moves, the techniques he uses. You can just tell that Grundy has got a super high level of wrestling. You can just see from the techniques that he uses. But Nick is way more difficult to gauge because the guys that he's facing are so bad and they concede victory so easily that it's almost like these guys are play fighting. It's really weird to watch them, guys. And I haven't got anything in particular that I want to call out from this fight between Nick and Gorbenko, which took place back in 2017. There's nothing I really want to call out about him. But the reason why I chose to show you this fight was because this is probably his most competitive fight. Which is interesting because the guy he's fighting, Gorbenko's got a record of 12 wins and 41 losses. So God knows why he's still competing. But I'm just going to leave this run in the background just so you can see that Nick looks really average. You know, not a particularly dangerous striker. Not a particularly dangerous wrestler. Doesn't really have the best takedown entries. Not the heaviest top game. Doesn't have the best striking defense. But I'm just really struggling to gauge where he's at because the guys he's fought are so bad that it's just tough to really give him much credit, and his technique doesn't blow my hair back either. You know, I understand that these guys coming into the UFC a lot of the time have got padded records, but this guy's super padded. Also, what you notice from him is he's quite slow. He's not that athletic. You know, this is Nick, basically, this guy here. Just nothing special is basically what I'm trying to say to you. And this guy, Gorbenko, that's got a record of 12 wins and 41 losses, you know, Nick, this guy that Nick's fighting, this guy here, basically retired at the end of the second round, said he didn't want to fight anymore because he was tired. He wasn't that hurt. You know, Nick didn't really do that much damage to him. Nick's just a very average fighter. And that's significant in this matchup because he's taken this fight on 2 weeks' notice. He's only 24 years old and he has only competed against a really low level of opponent. So Safarov is a huge step up in competition in so many ways. Not only is it a step up in competition in terms of technique, but it's also a step up in every single facet. It's a much bigger arena than Nick's ever competed in before. The bright lights of the UFC, octagon jitters can have a huge impact on a fighter's performance. And also with him taking this fight on just 2 weeks' notice, he's a young guy. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of nerves to deal with. And as we know, if you've seen Safarov fight before, you'll know that he doesn't give you any time to settle. He's very aggressive, hits very hard. He's a wild man. He has big holes in his own game, don't get me wrong. He is very reckless, which puts himself into bad positions. And he also has terrible cardio. It's not unusual to see him, you know, taking big, deep breaths and being gassed out of his mind after 3 or 4 minutes. But at the same time, he does fight with a kill or be killed style. He's your typical Russian. He's got a good chin. He's tough. And he wants to hurt you. He goes out there to take you out. And this guy, you know, Nick has never fought anyone like that before. And as we know, octagon jitters are a real thing, especially when you're stepping up and taking a fight on 2 weeks' notice, competing in one of the biggest indoor arenas in the UK. The O2 Arena is absolutely massive. You know, around 20 to 25,000 people will be there on Saturday night. So how is this guy going to deal with that? You know, Safarov, you saw at the weigh-ins, Safarov got in his face. We can pull that up here, actually. We can bring the weigh-ins up here. I will show you now. If we bring the weigh-ins up here, we can see Safarov getting into his face. You know, Safarov doesn't play games, very aggressive. He's a tough Russian. And he, from the very first second, will be looking to take Nick's head off. Won't give Nick any time to sell, any time to shake those octagon jitters off. He will be going for the kill. So if we just skim through here. Sorry guys, just going to concentrate on this 1 second. I believe it is about here. We can see exactly what you expect from Safarov. He is not coming to play games. He is coming to take Nick's head off. And this is a 24-year-old making his UFC debut on 2 weeks' notice against a tough Russian that hits extremely hard. Safarov's ready to go. He doesn't play. He doesn't compete. He looks to kill his opponent. Absolutely no doubt about it. So if we take all those things into consideration, guys, let's take a look at the odds here. So at the moment, Nick is around about a 1.63 favourite. Which for everyone in America, that's a minus 159 favourite, which gives him an implied probability of 61%. Now, based on what I've seen in my pre-fight research, I believe that's absolutely crazy. Nick's just not that great. You know, Safarov, for all his weaknesses, he still hits extremely hard. He's still got a great chin. He's still extremely dangerous and he's difficult to take down. Even when Safarov is very tired, he's still quite difficult to take down and hold down. So then if we look at Safarov's odds, you can currently bet him at best of around about 2.40, which is, for people in America, plus 140, giving him an implied probability of 42%. Now, with all things considered, guys, with seeing how average this guy looks, knowing how dangerous Safarov is, knowing that a massive percentage of fighters lose when they make their UFC debut, especially when they make their UFC debut on short notice, I think Safarov could be worth a gamble here, guys. Because like I say, I like to get a 5 to 10% margin on the bookies. I like to put my money in strong positions. And for me, all things considered, at worst, this is a 50-50 fight. because you don't know what kind of condition Nick's coming into this fight on, taking it on 2 weeks' notice. You don't know how he's going to deal with the pressure of competing under the bright lights of the UFC. There's a massive step up in competition for him. He's only 24 years old, and every single person that he's fought in his MMA career so far has basically rolled over and played dead and given him an easy win. Like I say, this guy Gorbenko basically quit at the end of the second round because he was tired. You go watch this fight on YouTube. So I think Safarov could be worth a look, guys. Nick, I kind of saw it there. Nick does have quite poor striking defense, and we know Safarov hits very hard. Safarov has also got a 5-inch reach advantage, and he swings for the fences. So there's a very, very high chance Safarov wins this fight by KO. Also, Safarov having 2 fights experience in the UFC, you'd expect his cardio to get a little bit better with every fight. You'd expect his pacing to get a little bit better with every fight. So what I would say to summarise this is there is a lot of risk in betting on Safarov. His fight IQ is not the best. He puts himself in bad positions for getting overly aggressive, and his cardio is bad. But you have to put your money in strong positions. This is a zero-sum game. And I believe this fight is 50-50. So if you bet Safarov at the current odds, you're getting an 8% margin on the bookie, which is quite good. Win or lose, I think Safarov's a decent gamble, because I'm not seeing anything from Nick which impresses me. And I know Safarov is extremely dangerous. He's one of the few guys that has been legitimately able to hurt Jean Vellante. I know Jean Vellante is a low-level guy, but his chin is still amazing. Vellante's chin's never in question. And Safarov was able to hurt him bad. And looking at how bad Nick's striking defense appears to be, I just think Safarov's worth a gamble. But this bet is very similar to the Veronica Mercado bet I gave you a few weeks ago. I will make it clear that there is a hell of a lot of risk with this bet. Don't go too big on Safarov. Don't gamble while you can't afford to lose. And don't commit too much of your bankroll or account balance to him, because he's not a safe bet. It's like Mercado. Personally, I capped this fight at 50-50. There is value there, but there's also a good chance it loses. So please, if you do bet Safarov and he does lose, don't be a baby. Don't go in the comments and cry over it. And at the same time, I don't want to see dickheads saying, you know, if Safarov were to lose, people come on and say, you know, you knew Nick was going to win, Safarov was a bad bet, blah, 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 blah. He isn't a bad bet. It's a 50-50 fight. Safarov's a decent-sized underdog. You're getting a good margin on the bookie. But at the end of the day, this is a cage fight and anything can happen. Anything can happen. You know, Safarov can kill this guy within 10 seconds. He can also get submitted by a flying armbar in the 3rd round. Who the fuck knows what's going to happen? But mathematically, there's a decent amount of value on Safarov. He's a decent bet, but don't be a baby if he loses. So that is it, guys. We are going to go on to the final fight now. The 4th fight that I want to talk about, which is Molly McCann against Priscilla Cachoeira. Now, I know I'm also butchering this name, so I'm just going to call her Priscilla out of respect. So, straight away, I want to say that Priscilla is extremely tough. We saw her in her last fight against Valentina Shevchenko go deep into the 2nd round despite taking one hell of a beating in that fight. If you go back and watch Priscilla's fight against Shevchenko, you've got to feel really bad for her, because even though Shevchenko dominated her, if you go back and watch this fight, literally after 30 seconds, her knee blows out. You can visually see her knee blowing out. At the time, I didn't notice it, but after reading articles this week talking about how she's had to take the last year recovering from a knee injury, when I went back and watched this fight, I saw clearly the point of the fight where her knee blew out. So if you go back and watch it, it's about 30 seconds into the fight in the 1st round. You can just basically see her knee kind of like pop, and then she instantly winces and starts to limp. So very early on in the fight, Priscilla blew her knee out. So the fact that she was able to fight deep into the 2nd round with that significant knee injury and take all that damage proves that this girl is extremely tough. Extremely tough, no doubt about it. Unfortunately, she's just not very good. And I know that's harsh. I hate to say it, because these fighters, man, they put it all on the line. They're so tough. They've got bigger balls than me. I am a total pussy. I would never, ever be able to do what they do. I hate getting hit, I hate getting hurt, I'm a total baby. So props to fighters when they go in the cage and put it all on the line for our entertainment. But even though I hate saying a fighter's bad at something, I do have to give it to you all real, and I have to explain to you how fighters match up, and I need to use words, and the best way I can do that is using harsh descriptive words, and I don't know how else to put it. But if we watch this fight from Priscilla, you can just see that she's not good. This is actually her fight just before she got into the UFC against Rosie Duarte from, you know, back in 2017. But she's only had one fight since then, and that was against Valentina Shevchenko. But you can basically see her style consists of walking forward, spamming the same left hook, right hook combo. That's literally all she does. You can find this fight on YouTube, and that's all she does. She basically comes forward, spamming the same combo over and over and over again. The same left, right hook combos. That's all she does. And I'll just leave this running in the background, like I've left a couple fights running in the background in this video. That is basically Priscilla in a nutshell. Now, this is another one of those fights where skill for skill, there's absolutely no doubt about it that Molly McCann is more of a skilled striker than Priscilla. You know, McCann stays light on her feet, you know, good technical boxing, fast hands. There's no doubt that she's more technical than Priscilla. I mean, look at Priscilla here, how wild she is, just winging these left and right hooks. You know, neither girl is particularly good on the ground. They've both got bad takedown defense. They've both got low-level ground games. But both these girls want to strike, so I expect this fight to stay standing. Now, this is a weird fight because something that we quite often see in women's MMA, more so than men's MMA, is that in women's MMA, we do see physicality come into play a lot. And what concerns me about Molly McCann is that even though there's not a particularly big size difference between these two, you know, Priscilla's only 2 inches taller, what I would say in terms of physicality and power, there is a big difference. You know, Molly McCann, she's only 5'4", and again, I hate to be disrespectful and use this term, but she does unfortunately have pillow fists. She just doesn't really hurt her opponents with strikes. She doesn't really have any power in her hands at all. You know, if we look at some of her past fights against Bryony Terrell, Priscilla de Souza, Lacey Schuckman, Angela Pink, if you go back and watch those fights, you know, she would land bombs on her opponent and she wouldn't really inflict that much damage. She wouldn't really hurt him that much. You could see that she didn't really carry that much power in her hands compared to someone like Priscilla, who swings for the fences, who's got a good chin, she's extremely tough, and she just comes forward winging bombs. And my concern for Molly McCann in this fight is that even though there's no doubt that she's the more technical striker, you know, better footwork, better defensively, better offensive technique, better boxing, this could be one of those women's MMA fights where you see McCann doing all the good work, staying light on her feet, picking Priscilla apart, but Molly not having the power to gain respect in there, and you just see Priscilla walk her down, walk through her shots, and just land bombs. And you could see a situation where, because Molly doesn't have that much power in her hands, she just can't gain respect in there, and she can't back Priscilla up. And even though Priscilla, you know, shouldn't be in there with her in terms of technique, just through sheer toughness and power and aggression can make this a close fight. And this is, like I say, pretty much Priscilla's style. She just walks forward, winging bombs. And Molly's got a good chin. You know, I don't really expect Priscilla to have too much success with this style, but we know what women's MMA can be like if you've got one fighter that doesn't have too much power in her hands, backing up, struggling to gain respect, struggling to hurt her opponent, and her opponent's coming forward with loads of aggression, controlling the centre of the octagon. Even though Molly McCann's got home advantage for this fight, she should have the hometown judges on her side. We know how things can get messy. And if we look at the odds on this fight, Molly McCann is currently around about a 1.50 favourite, which makes her a -200 favourite, giving her an implied probability of 67%, which means to get any value on betting McCann here, you pretty much have to give her a 72 to 80% chance of winning this fight, which I think is a real big stretch. I personally feel that McCann's biggest weakness is that she's undersized for the division. You know, this fight takes place at flyweight, but she's only 5'4". She's very small for a flyweight. You know, you see girls in the strawweight division at 5'5", 5'6", 5'7". That's really the division that McCann should be competing in. She should be competing in the strawweight division. So I worry when she goes up and she fights more physically. I worry that now when she fights in the flyweight division in the UFC and she goes up against these physical, powerful opponents like Priscilla, she's really going to struggle to gain respect in there. So at these odds, I definitely wouldn't bet on Molly McCann. There's just no value there for me. There just isn't. That is a stretch, 67%. And then if we look at the odds on Priscilla, you can bet her currently for around about an average of, say, 2.85 is available, which is plus 185. That gives her an implied probability of 35%. But to be honest with you guys, with Priscilla, she's so bad that I just don't have any interest in betting her. You know, if we look at some of the other underdog bets that I've recommended, you know, like Safarov, we know Safarov's a risky bet. We know he's got loads of weaknesses, but at the same time, on merit, he can win this fight just by being the better guy. You know, he hits hard, he can get a knockout win. You know, he can make it difficult for Nick to get this fight to the ground. Safarov can win his fight by being the better fighter, showing up with the superior skills, a superior game plan, knocking a Nick out. I'm trying to think of his surname, then I'll just stick with a Nick. But with Priscilla, she's so bad that I can't call a clear path to victory for her. You know, if we wanted to take a gamble on Jorge Masvidal, I could give you a clear path to victory for him. Mike Grundy, another underdog, I can give you a clear path to victory for him. Safarov, I can give you a clear path to victory for him. Priscilla, I can't really give you a clear path to victory for her because she's so bad. Her striking defense is bad. Her offense is so bad. All I can say about this fight is that I wouldn't bet on Molly because I can see ways that Priscilla can make life difficult for her. But at the same time, Molly should win because she's just a superior fighter. I just don't feel comfortable betting on her as a big favourite, I guess what I'm trying to say. So that's a pass from me. So that is it for tonight's video, guys. That was probably a long one. I know I did a lot of talking. I'm also super tired. It's like gone past midnight, so I'm kind of rambling a little bit. I'm very sorry. It's been a busy week. These events are coming thick and fast. There's events like every weekend in March. We've got 2 Bellator events coming up as well. I'm feeling a little bit burnt out, but I'm trying to get this content out as often as I can. Like I say, guys, if you do want this live stream video tomorrow, where I'll be answering all your questions in the live chat in this video, this Q&A chat. I'll also be breaking down the final 3 fights that I haven't covered yet, which are Gunnar Nelson against Leon Edwards, Jordan Rinaldi against Arnold Allen, and Claudio Silva against Danny Roberts. And if you want me to hunt for prop bets, hit a thumbs up on the button below, guys. Give me 50 likes and I'll wake up tomorrow bright-eyed, bushy-tailed and do that video for you. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe if you like my content. It would mean a lot. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Good night.